Okay, you're good.
All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our weekly Tuesday afternoon Facebook Live. My name is Pete Miele, Executive Director of Seminary Ridge Museum and Education Center. We're coming to you live each and every Tuesday throughout this time of COVID, bringing you stories and interpretations in the areas of religion, medicine, war, and peace. And we're going to talk a little bit about peace today. I'm actually standing on the structure that is known as the Peace Portico in the rear of our building, the Seminary Ridge Museum building. As we wait for people to log on, as I said, we're coming to you each and every Tuesday at 2 p.m. To bring you these Facebook Lives. We also have our monthly Zoom History Happy Hour for members. So if you are a member, that is a special perk. You can join Dr. Darrell Black and myself to talk about some interesting topics once a month. The last Friday of the month at 5 p.m. this month, August, we're going to be talking about Camp Letterman. Darrell will be back next week on Tuesday at 2 p.m. And the week after that, I'm going to be talking about the escape of James Pennington, who is a escaping enslaved person who comes up through Adams County. As I do every week, I invite you to like this, comment, ask any questions you might have. Rob Williams, our Director of Outreach, is back in the studio, his home, managing the Facebook Live, and he'll be asking questions as we get towards the end of the program. And then if you really like it, I invite you to share it with your friends or even join as a member and support us through these times. So today I'm going to focus on the building that is behind me, the building Schmucker Hall or Old Dorm. It's got a number of different names, the original seminary building, and really talk about the entire history of the building, but talk about two areas of that are important in the building's history that do not get a lot of emphasis. We think a lot about the Battle of Gettysburg, what happens on the grounds that I'm looking out towards right now, just to the west of this building. But I really want to focus on the meaning of peace that this building is imbued with, and we'll talk a lot about the Peace Portico, but then also this building as an early victory for the historic preservation movement in the late 1950s, and how this building was almost knocked down. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about this. But this building is our largest artifact. We like to say, when you go to museums, you get to see artifacts, but when you come into this building, you get to be in an artifact. So what do we mean when we say that this building is an artifact? Well, we have to go back all the way to 1826. And that is the year that the seminary is founded here in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. This was the dream of the General Synod that's established in the early 1820s. Lutherans wanted a place in the United States where they could come together and learn how to be ministers to the Lutheran faith. And there's a young leader that emerges in this General Synod, a man by the name of Samuel Simon Schmucker. And we talked a couple of months ago, about the importance of Samuel Simon Schmucker. And of course, this building is now known as Schmucker Hall. So he is very important. And he comes up here to Gettysburg in 1826 to be the first president, the faculty chairman, the professor, and the founder of the Gettysburg Seminary. And one of the reasons that Gettysburg is chosen for the home of this new seminary is that it is the center of 10 roadways that come into the town from all cardinal directions. So that's the reason that the battle starts here, and it's also the reason that the seminary starts here. The town of Gettysburg also offers use of the Gettysburg Academy building down in town at the corner of Washington and High Streets, a building that is still there today. And for the first 6 years, that is where seminary classes are held until 1832, when this building is completed. So construction on this building begins in 1830. Not the actual physical construction, but planning for this building begins in 1830. Building committee is formed at the board level. They come up here to Seminary Ridge, purchase 22 acres of land, the original plot of land that surrounds this building, and they're looking for a place sort of on the outskirts of town, a place where you're not going to be, students and faculty are not going to be distracted by the trappings of everyday life, somewhere where they can come up and it's quiet and it's a place to concentrate on studies and contemplate one's relationship with God. And in fact, as the initial students come up here in 1832 and begin to move into this building, they talk about how pleasant this area is, a place where it can totally be shut, that the world can be totally shut out, and it's very valuable to Samuel Simon Schmucker as he picks this area. This building is designed between 1830 and 1831. Schmucker himself has some input in the way that the building is going to be designed. Unfortunately, we have not been able to find, maybe somebody out there has it. If you have it, give me a call. But we have not been able to find the original floor plans for this building. And by looking in the board minutes, it looks like adjustments and changes were made to the design of the building, even as construction was going on, and that Schmucker himself had a hand in making alterations and amendations as right before the building was put up. The cornerstone is laid as part of the board ceremonies in May of 1831. Proper ceremonies are held. We believe the cornerstone is on the southeast side of the building, sort of around the corner from where I'm standing right now. Songs and hymns are given in German and English, and the cornerstone is laid. And then pretty quickly, this building is ready for habitation between May of 1831 and fall of 1832. This building is constructed, and the first students move in the fall of 1832. The builder is a man named Nicholas Pierce from Chambersburg, and he is able to put this building up for under $10,000. So as I said earlier, we don't have a floor plan of what the building looked like in its initial form in the 1830s, from the 1830s to the 1890s. We do have a good sense of what was going on inside the building, though, what functions the building was performing. So the first floor, what's today the first floor, was known as the basement floor, at the time had living quarters for the steward, had a dining hall, a refectory for the students to take their meals. There were classrooms in this building. There was a library, a place called Missionary Hall or Missionary Chapel, likely on the third floor, big meeting space. And then there was also living spaces for students. Now, when the building was first constructed, they ran out of money before the fourth floor could be completed. So for the first 30 years, almost 30 years, the fourth floor was not inhabited. The rooms were furnished, the rooms that were being used as dormitory were furnished by synods and towns and individuals. So the seminary was raising money for to outfit the rooms with beds and bed frames, stoves, desks, chairs, everything like that that a student would need to live would be donated. So there were rooms in here that were called the Gettysburg room, the Chambersburg room, the Frederick rooms, with money given by people from those localities. An interesting story in this building's history that I only just discovered as I was preparing for this presentation was the winter of 1847. And you can see there's a lot of chatter in the board minutes in 1847, winter 1847, 1848, where they're talking about making sure that the building is clean and safe for students, because in that winter, there was an outbreak of typhoid fever in this building. And in fact, 4 students passed away as a result. And there's articles in the Gettysburg and the Adams Sentinel, the big paper at the time, talking about, no, the building is safe. It's whatever disease is outbreaking is contained to this building. Schmucker is trying to defend the cleanliness of the seminary in the board minutes in the newspaper. But really interesting, a lot of study, more study to be done on that topic. Look for maybe another Facebook Live coming up in the future about the typhoid outbreak in 1847. Well, let's fast forward a little bit to 1863, the big moment in this building's history, the moment that really it is known for today. And that, of course, is the Battle of Gettysburg, which is going to start about 2 miles west of where I'm standing right now on the morning of July 1st, 1863. By the end of fighting on that day, the battle is going to come almost literally to the back door of the building where I'm standing today. In the early part of this building's life, the rear door was the side that faced west towards the battlefield. The front door was the side that faced towards town. So today, even when I say rear door, I mean the door that's looking out towards the battlefield, and the front door, which many people think is on the back, is on the other side. Well, anyway, the battle comes here to the back door of the seminary, and there are soldiers who are coming into this door to try to seek safety. Wounded soldiers, men like Bryce Blair and Levi Graham of the 149th Pennsylvania, are making their way up the back steps to the back door of this building, seeking refuge from the fighting that's happening west of here. And they look down, and there are bullet holes being knocked into the steps around them. And they have to go around to the other side to gain access to the building. Well, in any event, the building becomes a field hospital, and then a general hospital, and serves in this capacity for 2.5 months following the battle until September of 1863. Much damage, of course, is done to this building. Samuel Simon Schmucker, the president, still in 1863, writes about the perforated walls, cannonballs going through the walls on both sides of the building, and a 2-story crack somewhere in the building. Unfortunately, for our purposes today, all of the damages to this building is repaired by the summer of 1864. A lot of times we get that question, where's all the building damage? Well, the seminary wants to return this building to its rightful purpose, to its intended purpose of training soldiers, soldiers of God, students for the ministry, and sort of wants to downplay and forget its place in the battle. Between 1863 and 1895, this building is still being used as the primary home of the seminary. It's getting more and more outdated, getting older. They're doing periodic maintenance. They install gas lighting. At some point, they install coal stoves. But by and large, the seminary is outgrowing this building. And in fact, the seminary is contemplating moving to a different location like Washington, D.C. as the turn of the 20th century comes about. But they receive a gift in the late 1800s from a man in Gettysburg, a $22,000, which was big money at the time, gift, and it's only to be given to the seminary if they stay in Gettysburg. So as a result, the seminary takes that money, is going to rehabilitate this building and construct Valentine Hall, a new administrative center, just to the left of where I'm standing, the big red brick building that you can see when you come up here to the ridge. And as a result, this building is converted into just a dormitory space. So 1895, major renovations to this building, many of which you can still see today if you come and visit us. The staircases on either end of the building, the hallway flooring, the wainscoting on the walls, is all from that 1895 renovation. And the building is going to pretty much serve quietly in this role for the next 50 years, from 1895 to 1954. We'll get to that in a few minutes. But I want to talk about a really big event in this building's life. If we're talking about this building as a person, an event in this building's life. And that is in the 1913-1914 period. And of course, July of 1913 is the 50th anniversary of the Battle of Gettysburg. And the seminary board is approached to open this building once again to soldiers, veterans this time, and to use this building as a sort of hotel for visiting dignitaries, many of them from the southern states. Well, the seminary at the time is having a lot of internal discussions about how this building should be used, whether or not it should be used for secular purposes like the anniversary, or for it only should be used for training ministers to go forth. And eventually the seminary comes to an understanding amongst themselves, and the doors are opened, and people are coming into this building for the 6 days of the 150th anniversary. Descendants of Pickett and Longstreet, George Meade, Henry the governor of Virginia, I think it's Henry Wise, comes in and stays in this building. And as a result, the seminary receives a sum of money, around $3,000, for renting out this building. And they make some improvements on the interior of the building, replace some bathrooms. They make some improvements on the refectory, the new dining hall that's been built across the street. And then they're also going to erect this peace portico. And this is one of my favorite spots on the battlefield because it is the first monument to peace on the Gettysburg battlefield. And if you can see right behind me, a plaque. This portico is a peace memorial commemorating the 50th anniversary of the battle, AD 1913. And it predates the peace light up on Oak Hill, the Eternal Light Peace Memorial, by 24 years. And throughout the early part of the 20th century, people are advocating that a peace memorial be erected on the Gettysburg battlefield. They want to do something. The Congress wants to do something for the 1913 reunion, but they do not pass the funding. So the seminary takes it upon itself to erect this semicircular portico with 6 columns and dedicates it to peace. And the dedication ceremony takes place in 1914 as part of the graduation exercises in the spring and May of 1914. The invited speaker that day is a man named Henry Eister Jacobs. He is a graduate of this seminary. He is the son of Michael Jacobs. You may have heard of him because Michael Jacobs is the man that keeps all of the weather recordings, weather readouts during the battle. Does it, in fact, for most of the mid 1800s. And his son is Henry Eister Jacobs. And Henry Eister comes and he gives the dedication and basically says that there is no better place for a peace memorial than here, than on an institution, on a building whose mission it is to send forth ministers of the gospel of peace. And he says that this old building, plain and unpretending as it is, was more of a monument to the great battle than the hundreds of costly structures that adorn the battlefield today. That this was a building that received its baptism of fire by shot and shell. So it's a place to think about the war that occurs, the fighting that comes up right to the back door of this building, but it's also a place to think about reunion. It's a place to think about reconciliation. It's a place to think about the work that still needs to be done. Is there reunion? Is there reconciliation? What do we need to do to really achieve those goals? So that's how I like to think about this structure. And it was rebuilt during the renovation that took place in 2011, 2012, 2013. And we'll talk about that as we get closer to the present. Another big event that happens in August of 1913 in this building's history is that the original cupola, the one that General Buford and his signal officer Aaron Jerome used during the Battle of Gettysburg, the original cupola is struck by lightning in a storm that the papers say is the worst storm to occur in living memory. That 3 buildings are struck by lightning that evening, including this one. The cupola begins to burn. It burns down to the roof line, but it's saved through the prompt response of students and faculty and family and the Gettysburg Fire Department, who are able to extinguish the fire before it takes out the whole building. There was also a slate roof on top of this building that helps to stop the fire as well. But it's rebuilt to its original specifications pretty quickly. So today you might not be in the space that you're in the actual structure that Buford inhabited, but you're in the space. You're at the same height as Buford and Jerome as they looked out across the field on that morning of July 1st. So 1913, 1914, very important years in the history of this building and especially in commemorating the battle up here at the seminary. So between 1914 and 1952, the building is continuing to serve as a dormitory. It's getting older and older. and is needing more and more and more and more work. They're doing periodic maintenance on the building. But as we get to the 1950s, something drastic needs to be done with this building, or it needs to be knocked down. And there's debates that are occurring in the 1950s that are going to decide the fate of this building, luckily for our purposes, for the positive. But in the early 1950s, the Pennsylvania Department of Labor and Industry takes a look at this building and basically says that it needs to be brought up to code or students can no longer live in it. And the seminary is able to say, give us some time to think about it. They're able to push the Labor and Industry Department off for a year, continue to have students live in here. But by 1952, the seminary board is greatly considering knocking the building down. It's going to be between $350,000 and $400,000 to basically take the building and put a fireproof structure in it, retain the shell that you see, but put a fireproof structure inside. It's only going to cost $200,000 for the seminary to build a brand new dormitory with housing for couples. Many of the students at this time are married, and this building was not suitable for that, but a new dormitory would be. So throughout the 1950s, from 1952 to 1957, the seminary is debating what to do with this building. They vote to study the feasibility of knocking the building down. And by 1957, the debate spills over into the Gettysburg newspapers. And in October of 1957, citizens begin to voice their concerns here in Gettysburg about what's going to happen to this building. And people are saying that history is never going to forgive us if we knock this building down. It's not going to change history to knock this building down, but people are going to look at us differently, are going to look down upon us that we let this building be destroyed. And new organizations like the Civil War Roundtable of Gettysburg, which is established in 1957, members of which sign their names to some of these letters in the newspaper to save this building, save this building. The seminary says, look, we want to save it, but we don't have the money to do it. If we can find a way to raise some money and have somebody occupy this building, we're open to it. So in late 1957, early 1958, a group of organizations in Gettysburg, the Round Table, the Adams County Historical Society, the Battlefield Guide to the Tourism Council, get together and nominate Fred Tilburg, the chief historian of Gettysburg National Military Park, to look for ways to save this building, to see if we can raise some money to save this building. And by 1959, a plan has emerged that the Adams County Historical Society is going to move into this building, move out of their cramped quarters in the basement of the Adams County Courthouse, and use this building as their research center, library, and as a museum. So by 1961, they've raised money to do that. They've moved their collections up here. And over the next 50 years, from 1961 until about 2011, this building is going to be the headquarters of the Adams County Historical Society. So big preservation win right there. And this is all happening. You need to think about sort of the context, because America is becoming more and more interested in historic preservation in the 1950s and 1960s. After World War II, there are big city building booms, urban renewal, and as a result of all these new buildings going up in cities and towns across the nation, older buildings are being destroyed. And people, I think Pennsylvania Station, New York City, train station, destroyed through this urban renewal, and people are starting to get more and more aware of that, and Congress begins to pass laws, and organizations like the National Trust for Historic Preservation are formed in order to save buildings like this. So this is one of the very, very first that I've been able to see real preservation wins coming out of this new historic preservation movement in the late 50s, early 60s. So over the next 50 years, between 1961 and 2011, the Adams County Historical Society is going to use this building as their headquarters. They're going to put money into it to maintain it. They're going to put fire escapes on the building. They're going to redo the electrical work, do plumbing, painting, masonry. As the building, the Historical Society and the Seminary are going to receive money to sandblast the building, repoint the bricks, do some masonry work in the 1960s, which is going to help save this building. And over time, they're going to put about $130,000 into maintaining this building. As we reach the early 2000s, the building becomes more and more in need of another major rehabilitation. Remember, the last major rehabilitation done to this building was in 1895. So we're looking at more than 100 years by the time we get to the late 2000s. And the seminary and the Historical Society get together. The seminary forms a nonprofit organization, the Seminary Ridge Historic Preservation Foundation, which is going to undertake the rehabilitation of this building, new electrical, geothermal, and turn this into the great museum that we have here up on the ridge today. So the Seminary Ridge Historic Preservation Foundation, again, is the organization that now oversees and operates the museum. We opened, of course, on July 1st, 2013, and we've been welcoming visitors to this historic and storied building ever since. We have the cupola open for tours. Again, you get to stand in the space that John Buford and Aaron Jerome stood in on June 30th and July 1st of 1863 and look out and plan their defense of Gettysburg. But it also tells those stories about human suffering that takes place in these walls, the care of the wounded over 2.5 months, but then also talks about some of the aspects of the way that the Civil War is still with us today. And as I said earlier, this peace portico is something that really comes back to me when I think about what work there is to be done to fulfill Lincoln's promise that he gave here at Gettysburg, what we need to do to continue the unfinished work for freedom. Let's think about this peace portico, what it stands for, and of course, as I've been saying, what else needs to be done. So Rob, do we have any questions?
No questions at this time.
Okay. Well, if that's the case, then if you do have questions that come up as you're thinking about this, I invite you to put them on the Facebook post. We'll come back and take a look at those later on today and address any of those that might come up. Again, I'm Pete Miele. I'm Executive Director of Seminary Ridge Museum and Education Center here in Gettysburg. Thank you for joining us. We're here every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Bringing you interesting stories and interpretations in the areas of religion, medicine, peace, and war. If you like this, please like it on Facebook, share it with your friends, become a supporter of Seminary Ridge Museum. We can't do the great work of telling these stories and preserving this building without your help. And if you're in the Gettysburg area, we are open Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and we hope to see you up on the ridge soon.